Hello there everyone and welcome to the first 100% race on the channel. We're going to be tackling the Yas Marina Circuit in Max Verstappen's Red Bull, the newly updated Yas Marina Circuit. I wanted to give it a try. These are basically my first laps on the track outside of a little bit of time trial just to get a feeler. So who knows how this race is going to end up going. It is also quite literally my first 100% race on the game as well, so it should be a lot of fun as we flick through the strategies. I was trying to avoid the three stopper, but it seems like that's basically the best strategy, using and chewing through that soft tire compound as we prepare to launch off on the formation lap, and as always try and get some temperature into the tires. I'm just going to feel for the grip levels out there at the moment. I must say the lighting, especially when you start the race, really nice on this track, and you'll see over time that will develop. In terms of the goals and the expectations, really just seeing how high we can finish. I believe I set the AA about 98, so it should be a good challenge, and excited to see how far we can progress up the grid. We look to angle the car so we get a run down the inside into turn number 1 as we enter the replay camera. 5 red lights. And away we go. Getting a decent launch off the line, but of course a 58 lap race, so we can't win it here at the first corner. We can certainly lose it. Getting a few positions there down the inside of a couple of the Williams cars and one of the Aston Martins. Very closely bunched up here on the first lap. Just looking to ensure that we don't make any contact simulation damage and damage rate as well. So any contact could be quite disastrous for us in this race, and especially if you get fall damage or side pod damage, that will really add up over the course of a full Grand Prix. Using a lot of our battery up here early, getting a run onto that back straight, passing Ricardo down the inside, a pretty easy one there. We got a little bit deep and make some contact with Sonoda riding that sausage curb as well. Fortunately, we don't get any damage. At least none pops up. I'm sure we'll probably confirm that with the engineer now. More battery being used, and we will eventually get past Sonoda. A lot cleaner this time, and it does sound like we have got it through unscathed. No damage to report. Up into P14 now, so quite a few positions gained on the first lap. So can't complain too much. As we enter the hotel section, reprofiled in the new game, these corners opened up a little bit. You can carry a lot more speed and momentum through them, and they're certainly a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable to drive. Schumacher peeling off into the pits, so he's done some damage on that first lap, but again, we're unscathed. Up now into P13. AI up ahead, still running side by side as well, so they'll be losing quite a bit of time, and we're pretty eager to capitalize, try and get through the midfield as quick as possible so we can start attacking the front runners. Battery deployed heading in to the hairpin. Again, looking to gain as many positions as possible, but also not wanting to make contact, and much like the first lap, tucked behind one of the McLarens now in Lando Norris, and almost a carbon copy there, as we did on Ricardo previously. Down the inside, flying past, really good straight line speed on the Red Bull in this game, and again, carbon copy making some contact there with the AlphaTauri of Gasly on this occasion. As we rapidly approach the top 10, I believe once more we have gotten away without damage. But no, we're wrong. A small chip there, probably on the front right, so that's unfortunate. But it does feel like in this game you can largely get away with that, probably only losing a little bit of time. So I have to see whether or not we elect to pit later on. As we enter the hotel section once more, and oh my god, Magnussen just getting held up. We make more significant contact there, and straight away the engineer over the radio wanting to change the strategy. Look to box us nice and early here on the second lap, end of the second lap. We need to get that front wing repaired. Now it's not an absolute disaster we can recover this time, but it does put us out of sync of the rest of the field. I mean that we're going to have to be really pacey to try and gain back track position. Ultimately the last stint, I think, on the mediums will need to be longer than the AI.
And away we go. No problems, very
8-second pit stop, and as you can see, the estimated life about 18 laps on these tyres. I'll have to wait and see just how long we can actually get on them. Pit exit a little bit difficult on this track as we go wide. Cold tyres as well, so the traction out of the tunnel also quite tough, and we find ourselves now in a big space of fresh air. 5 seconds ahead to Schumacher, who we saw previously pit, and then 24 seconds to the next pack of cars and Latifi and so on. So it's really just about banking in some good lap times here and trying to be as consistent as possible. We get the fastest lap there on a lap number 4 and look to just continue this pace and catch up to the likes of Schumacher. P18, and it's about a 6/10 gap at the moment, looking to probably set him up for the back straight. Just got a nice clean run here through the S's. We have about 50% of the battery remaining of fuel, no issue. Probably, in hindsight, overfueled a little bit in this race, but nonetheless, better to be safe than sorry. DRS heading on to the straight now, and we look to deploy some battery and just get this done nice and quickly on the straight. Hopefully not lose too much time heading into the chicane. We do gain quite a bit of pace, but we are forced to the outside by Schumacher, looking to defend the inside. Short shift up to third. Trying to get good traction out of the corner and short shift to fourth and back up through the gears now. We get past Schumacher, but he might have a run back at us here, so we look to defend the inside, force him out wide into the new hairpin. Probably one of the most enjoyable corners on the track now. A couple of different racing lanes you can take, and the AI often struggling a little bit as I do there, mounting the curb on the right. But we do survive. And once again, heading through the hotel section. Love the flow of this part right now. A lot more enjoyable to drive and get that move confirmed. Skipping on now to lap 14. Some of the AI have pitted and we find ourselves back into the points. P10 chasing down Gasly now within a second. Not much battery though, so we'll have to be mindful of that, but instead we elect to dive in towards the pits. So we did get about 12 or so laps on that set of softs as we go for our second pit stop of the race. Don't believe there's any damage to be fixed on this occasion, but as you can see, a small front wing adjustment. I think we took off a little bit of aero as the car gets lighter, as the fuel gets burned over the course of the race. We don't quite need as much front aero, and that's especially important through the S's at the start of the lap, and also that new hairpin leading into sector 3. Again, we almost kissed the wall there on the exit of the pit lane, and we're going to be racing, I believe, on exit. Cold tyres, very, very tough. Schumacher actually squeezing us out wide there. We don't want to tussle with him too much, so we send it down the inside. Pretty clean move at that. DRS as well, fortunately for us, so we should be able to run away from him a little bit. As we swerve, try and get some temperature into the tyres. Don't want to block Schumacher though, of course. A little bit hasty into that chicane, and I think that may have been a byproduct of the slight damage I got earlier, or maybe some floor damage. I can't quite remember, but I do definitely remember locking up a couple of times into that chicane rather, and it was a little bit challenging. We set another new fastest lap of the race, 128.6, and Latifi now next in line. Should be a relatively easy overtake. In fact, might be able to line him up heading in towards the hairpin. We deploy the battery, give him the dummy and send it down the inside. Really clean pass there, happy with that one. We don't get DRS though heading onto the straight, so we are forced to use the remainder of our battery pack just to ensure that Latifi can't get back at us. The Williams does have decent straight line speed, but we get the job done and move forward now on towards Stroll. Good run through that hairpin once more, but heading into the third sector, a very difficult place to initiate an overtake. Instead, looking to maybe set him up heading on to the start-finish line. All that just getting a nice smooth run through here. Apply a little bit of pressure. Stroll going quite wide there. His tyre life probably not amazing at this point in time. Look to just get a nice clean run there onto the final corner, and we do. Battery pack deployed. We go round the outside, look to try and stick it. Stroll, though, doesn't want to give up the position that easily and attempts to hold it on the inside, but doesn't quite have the grip or the pace in that Aston Martin, and we're able to run away from him as well. So, as expected, the back mark is relatively easy to cut through, but this is where things start to get a little bit more challenging on lap 22. P9 catching up to Bottas ahead in P8. And the Alpha is certainly not one of the slower cars. As you can see, we're struggling for grip a little bit. Do get DRS though heading in towards the hairpin, and that gap closing massively, but probably not enough to make a lunge just yet. Instead, much like Stroll, maybe try and set him up for the first corner. A bit of a mischief there though, not helping our cause. Nonetheless, they're still maintaining pace. Hit the inside, just try and roll it over the curbs here. Just to tease the throttle and go a little bit wide there. Almost kissing the wall that Latifi made contact with in real life last year. Fortunately for us though, no contact made. And I think right about now, as you can see, tyre wear starting to become a factor, creeping up at 30%. And maybe the strategy for now is to just sit behind Bottas, stay within a second, maybe not even attempt an overtake, as that could slow us both down, and instead ride that slingshot throughout the race to our next pit stop. Similar gap here as we fast forward a bit. This last sector in particular getting a little bit precarious, having to probably mount that curb on the final of the almost 45-degree corners a little bit more than we would like, but that's the signal now, I think, to pit as we understeer a little bit, almost into the wall on entry, but nonetheless make it through cleanly. Lap 26. And what compound will we be putting on this time? It's the yellow medium tyres, and we'll be looking to ride these all the way to the end, so a pretty long stint, it must be said. Estimated tyre life 32 laps, so we're almost right on the limit there on the medium tyre, so we'll need to make sure that we conserve them as much as possible, but at the same time still looking to gain positions and try and get as many positions on the midfield as possible. I think at this point in time it's going to be really tough without a safety car to catch the front runners, but nonetheless we'll keep that in the back of our mind as Bottas gets absolutely driven off the road there by Yuki Tsunoda, giving us a good opportunity to make an overtaking attempt heading into the hairpin, but no grip on the outside, and Bottas able to maintain position. Fortunately for us though, we actually did lift off the throttle a little bit heading into that corner to allow us to get DRS. We use that very tactically to then fly straight back past him and actually start mounting an attack now onto Tsunoda, only 8 tenths ahead, so we should get DRS onto him as well. And we have maybe just made a master play for almost 2 overtakes in one here. We'll have to see how much ground we can make on Tsunoda. We have 30% battery left, we elect not to use it. Probably just out of range to have been caught anyway. Instead though, we'll sit close behind him. Not really an opportunity to make a move here, but looking to maintain pace and apply a little bit of pressure. These medium tyres didn't feel all that bad, but the question will be for how long. We don't want to wear them out too soon. Those things don't look good for us. Fortunately though, Tsunoda does pull off to the right and makes a pit stop, giving us quite a bit of free air now onto lap 36. The gap to Bottas behind has extended, and in fact he will pit for, I can only assume, his final pit stop of the race. That elevates us well and truly into 4th, as a bunch of other cars have pitted as well, and it looks like we'll be racing Hamilton and the Mercedes on exit. In the long term, the AI are going to have much better tyre life, as we're already up at about 20%, with still 20 or so laps remaining. That gap to Hamilton behind closing, only 3 tenths in it, so he'll be in DRS zone, and DRS range rather, and he'll be attacking us in those zones. Now down to a 10th. Tyre wear becoming a bit of an issue. That exit through the S's as well, quite precarious. Don't want to get forward damage by running too wide. Hamilton has a look-see down the inside. We try to hold around the outside, but not the ideal line. He will now just tuck right behind him, and as you can see, not using DRS, not using any battery and just actually lifting a little bit off the throttle, maintaining pace. A little bit of damage there on the front wing. Don't know if I noticed that at the time, but it didn't seem to be affecting our pace too much. Still able to maintain our gaps to the AI. It was mainly, I think, the tyre wear that was making life difficult as we just send it down the inside against Hamilton. Really good move there, and he tries his best, much like we did, to hold it around the outside, but so challenging on both corners respectively. Gives us a lead, at least momentarily, against him, and we maintain P4. A 6-second gap up ahead to Russell. Very unlikely we'll be able to catch him, but it's now all about trying to maintain position, and with track position, see how much we can hold off the AI, or see for how long we can hold back the AI, who again in the long run will have better tyre life and should, towards the back end of the race, have really good pace. Battling with Hamilton has now allowed Sainz actually to get into the battle as well. He's only 6/10 behind us, so it will be a 3-man sprint down the straightaway here. Both cars behind will have DRS, and that's going to make it very difficult to defend against either of them. Make a pretty conscious decision early here not to use battery, as I know it's just going to compromise us, and we may well be able to use it on the next straight. Braking relatively early here, conceding the corner to Hamilton. Just being mindful of Sainz now, 4/10 behind. We do in fact get DRS, and that should allow us to mount a response here to Hamilton, who's elected to take the inside line quite early, forcing us around the outside, but we make it stick before the corner. Has it go back at us, the inside, the favoured line. Use a bit of battery on exit, trying to maintain position here, bailing side by side into the hotel section. Hamilton still holding it around the outside. We give him the space, we give him the room, but he just swings wide straight into us. Now a yellow front left wing, and that has spelt disaster for us in this race. Immediately, out of probably frustration, electing not to pit there and not confirming the strategy immediately either. Trying to test the waters and see whether or not we really can still contend with Hamilton here in P4 now. And as he starts to glide away a little bit, and as you can see, that snap oversteer, I slowly come to the realization that probably will not be possible, unfortunately, as Sainz now makes a lunge from behind, takes the inside, and will surely take P5 away from me. Such a disappointment there. Hamilton again just going a little bit too wide. That said, we do get DRS and the battery. Sweeping past Sainz, and we look to maybe dive bomb Hamilton, but unfortunately that just leads to more damage as we collect Sainz on the outside. So things really going from bad to worse here in this race. And I know for sure I will now need to pit on lap 41. Started in P20, up even into P4, and unfortunately it's crumbled a little bit here. 2 front wing changes in total over the course of this race, costing us a lot of time. Unlike the first pit stop, this is going to be a lot more difficult to recover from, simply because we'll now need to jump onto a hard compound tyre, the only tyre set that we have remaining here for the race. And we'll need to try and make back all the time we've lost, but we actually elect not to pit on this lap, so thinking that maybe we can maintain pace here. Sainz does dive into the pits, so he must have gotten some front wing damage from our earlier engagement. Nonetheless, though, the gap to Hamilton increasing and the gap behind to Alonso decreasing. As we move forward now onto lap 42, I ultimately decide that I need to pit in this race. With about 16 laps remaining, hope that maybe I can recover some of the positions I've now lost. Certainly was not happy at the time. An 8-second pit stop and hard tyre compound on that will well and truly last us to the end of the race. Pit exit going to be even more tricky, I think, with the hard compound tyre as we drifted out, but make it through unscathed. Question will be, are we racing on exit once again? And it looks like we will be. Sainz has gotten the jump on us. He pitted a little bit earlier to correct his damage, and Norris just in front of him, side by side through the hairpin. This is going to help us a lot in gaining back some time. Critically, we do get DRS once more, hunting down positions 9 and 8 up ahead. Surprisingly, don't have much battery remaining, but we used a significant portion of it just to maintain pace. Trying to get these hards up to temperature. The chicane could be a little bit tricky, but we make good work of it, at least initially. Shifting into 6th though, still lacking traction. We check those tyre temps and it's the fronts that are still quite cold. Doesn't stop us from wanting to make a move down the inside on Sainz, but a plume of smoke from the rear of the McLaren, and Norris will have to retire from the race. I thought maybe we overtook Sainz there under yellow flags, and perhaps we did, but the stewards don't penalise us for it. So we'll hold position. Now up into P8, 7 seconds ahead to Bottas, 21 to Alonso. So I think realistically from this point onwards, our best bet is just grind in some laps and hope that we can get half a second on Bottas a lap, and maybe threaten him on the last few laps of this race. Anything beyond that at this point, basically impossible, unless we get a safety car, but it doesn't look like one has been deployed for Norris. I was crossing my fingers there would be, so we can maybe make a late charge through the pack, but unfortunately just not our day, which is ironic. Max Verstappen not getting a safety car when he needs it the most on this track, but nonetheless we still have to be very careful of Sainz behind, closing down that gap as he makes an aggressive move down the inside. We brake quite early to give him the room. We back ourselves in to maybe make the switch back here on to the next straight. We get DRS now and the battery, and this has been the tactic of the night. Let the AI get the chicane and then get them back heading in towards the hairpin, and then if you get a strong enough run through the hotel section, you can almost leave them in there in your own dust. Not much battery though, so we'll have to make sure this is very clean, and it looks like for the most part it has been quite successful. The gap now maintaining itself at about 3 to 4 tenths behind. Moving on to lap 54 of the Grand Prix, still in 8th position, but Bottas now well and truly in our sights. The mediums on the AI, despite them taking them on a little bit later than we did, at this point still getting quite worn and quite tricky to drive, whereas the hards could probably last the entire race if you really tried. So I don't think we're going to have too many issues at all in that regard. 4.5 laps to try and catch Bottas here. Again, with Alonso 17.5 ahead, that's not going to be possible unless there's a very late safety car, but I highly doubt it at this point of the race. DRS being used, conserving battery to try and make a move later on in the race. Sainz still behind at about half a second, despite being within DRS range. Didn't really pose too much of a threat towards the back end of the race, but still do need to respect him. A very experienced, very strong driver in real life and in the game as well. Good run through the hotel section. Bottas struggling for traction. Thought almost would understeer into the wall, but able to maintain. We understeer into the last corner, so don't get an ideal run, but again, it's just about finding the right opportunity for us to get past. We don't want to burn our battery too early, and we also don't want to make any rash moves that could cost and undo all the hard work we've done so far. Any more damage would be incredibly frustrating in this race. I don't think it was shown, but I do believe at this point I had 4 damage as well. The exit from that first sector, S's. If you go a little bit too out wide to the left, there's some gnarly bumps out there that can do floor damage, but nonetheless it seems like our pace still there as we look to fly past Bottas, and we've done that several times in the race so far. A lot of the battery used, so we've really got to hope that we can stick it from this point onwards. I thought maybe I would be more conservative and try and line him up for the hairpin like I have so many others, but back myself in on the traction zone and able to just skate away from Bottas, who could not mount any sort of response. That gap on the final lap out to 8 tenths to Sainz and a big 2 seconds to Bottas. And overall, this race has been a lot of fun. A little bit frustrating that we did end up making contact there with Hamilton, and I do believe it was his fault, unfortunately, just going a little bit wide, but nonetheless, still really good racing as Charles Leclerc will take victory here And we continue to fight, try and maintain 7th place in front of his teammate. We do have to be a little bit careful. Not too much of the battery remaining, and if Science has a big chunk available, he might be able to make a run onto us heading in towards the hairpin, so we just have to keep him right behind us if possible. That gap closing massively, and we elect to try and take the inside here, defend aggressively. Science thinks about a move around the outside, but knows that's probably not going to be possible, and that should be P7 banked away. Just got to be clean from this point onwards into the 45-degree right-hander. Short shift into 4th, into the left, swing it out wide, back to the left. Ensure that we don't make contact with the wall on the outside, but it looks like our run home should be clean. Wasn't a perfect race, but it was fun nonetheless as we round the last corner, cross the line, and it will be P7.
They've done it then. A spectacular victory here in Abu Dhabi. And a massive confidence boost for the entire team, I'm sure. What do you think it was today, Ant, that gave them the edge over the competition?
Well, time management probably played quite a large role in the outcome of this one. As ever, it's not just about speed, it's all about maintaining that speed consistently over a stint, over a race distance. So being able to keep up the lap times while still being smooth on the controls and gentle on the tyres, that's really where the race was won today.
Looking at the podium, you can see that red suit familiar to fans across the globe. A world-class win for a world-class team. Ferrari, do it again. Some amazing talent out on the track today. But Anthony, who would you pick as your driver of the day?
Max Verstappen seemed to just effortlessly weave through the other drivers today without a care in the world. He was definitely my driver of choice.
Well, what an end to another fantastic weekend of racing. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and we'll see you for the next one.